Welcome back everybody to the Aspie world. I'm Dan, and in this video we're going to talk about dyslexia. Hey, what's up? My name is Dan. I have Asperger's syndrome, ADHD, dyslexia and OCD, and I make weekly videos on these subjects, so consider subscribing to see more of this type of content. Let's talk about dyslexia. When I was in primary school, which is kind of like preschool, I was a bit far behind, you know. I was kind of not up to speed as the other kids with reading, with writing, with other types of motor skills, and you know, they didn't know what was wrong. And then I went through a few bits and pieces of testing. One of the things that they came across was dyslexia, so they tested me on these kind of reading and writing skills, and then at the end of it they said, hey, you know, your son has dyslexia, and my parents were just like, okay, what does this all mean? How do we cope with this? And they said, oh well, you know, it'll need additional help and stuff. So they gave me like this one-to-one in school, but it never really took off. I never really had any gain from it. Dyslexia is this kind of neurodiverse issue that people have, where their brain takes a longer time to process words and letters and things, and sees them in a very different way to the average typical person. So a neurotypical person would see words and read things at a certain pace, but a neurodiverse kind of dyslexic person will read the words slightly differently, and they may not read the word correctly. It may take them a while to kind of break the word down and read them in smaller pieces, and that's kind of like how dyslexia works. A lot of people may see dyslexia as like the words being flipped on the page, or that the person just sees the words melting on the page and stuff, but this isn't always true. The idea is that they see the word, but the word doesn't look how it does to a neurotypical person. So you know, you see the word for what it is, but it takes you a while to process it because you've got to break the word down and read it and then find out what it's about. This again is comorbid with my Asperger's condition, which is part of the autism spectrum disorders, and this is why they go kind of hand in hand. You know, if people have got Asperger's syndrome, more than likely they'll have dyslexia. So back to primary school. So I was basically going through these motions of having like a one-to-one, like a reading person. I went for like extra classes to see this person to read, and then they teach me how to read and write. I know my mum sent away for like these like additional help packs, like learning pack. You like mail it off, and then you get this thing, and you have like this, I don't know, this picture of this guy, and you have to write down, you know, I don't know what he's doing in the picture, and then colour some stuff. And it was kind of like, it was okay, I get it, but it wasn't helping the situation. It wasn't really engaging me, and I wasn't learning from it. I was just going through the motions. I still took as long to read, I still took as long to write, and my handwriting was still rubbish. And my handwriting still is rubbish, it's never going to get any better. So that was primary school. And then in high school, they kind of said, well, okay, you got dyslexia, but we haven't really got any resources for it, so you're gonna have to go to this additional class after school to see a teacher. So I went to this additional class after school, and then the teacher there was saying to me like, oh, you know, you just kind of got to learn how these words work, and learn this and learn that. And it was kind of like, well, you know, I had issues with homophones. So like people with dyslexic have issues with homophones, and homophones are like there, and there. You know, there's different types of three words that sound the same, but they'll be spelled completely differently, and like two and two, you know, finding out which way that these go. And I found homophones so overwhelming. It was kind of like, I just didn't know which ones were right, and I was like, dang, you know, I'm never going to get this right. But I've managed to learn some tips and tricks about it. But dyslexia is also a coordination issue as well. It makes me more clumsy, and I can fall over it quite easily, and I knock into things, and it's kind of held me back, you know. So when this is a typical trait of someone with dyslexia, right? So if you're going to say, oh, that's cool nail varnish you're wearing, but if you can't spell the word varnish, then you use another word like, oh, that's cool nail polish. So I always find like a way around writing out a sentence because I don't know how it's gonna go. It was just so bizarre, you know. I found that, I don't know, I found it was kind of bizarre because you're taking twice as long to do something because of an issue that you are unaware of, or the fact that you don't know how to spell this word, and there's really, you know, some need for improvement of support there. So when I was about 16 or 17, when I left high school, I went to an optician's. The optician said, hey, you know, reading on different colored paper may help. So I got these blue tinted glasses and like this blue kind of sheety overlay thing that I'd put over pages, and I'd read them. It kind of helped the strain of reading because the page wasn't so harshly white on your eyes, but it didn't really solve the issue that I couldn't spell I still couldn't read. One of the other tips I had from when I was in high school is that the teacher was like, you just need to read more, you know, you need to read more. And I was like, okay. So I went out to the store and I bought Harry Potter, The Prisoner of Azkaban, and I had this book and I thought, well, I can't read these letters. And then another thing was that when I was in school, they were saying to me, hey, you should use a dictionary, because by using a dictionary, you get to look up the word and you know how to spell. And I said, yeah, but I don't know what I'm looking for. You know, how can you look up a word? If I knew what the word was, how it's spelled, so I could look up in a dictionary, then I wouldn't need the dictionary. I mean, it was the most pointless exercise in the world. So people were really clutching at straws here to find out what the heck was wrong. And obviously after my Asperger's diagnosis, it was kind of clear that it was comorbid. You know, I've got dyslexia, I've got Asperger's syndrome, I've got ADHD, OCD, and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of made sense to me, and I was like, dang, you know, I need to embrace the fact that I'm dyslexic. And so what if my handwriting is terrible? So what if my, you know, reading speed is rubbish? So what, you know? And I was always this believer that in the future we won't need handwriting. We won't need to read things as intensely as we do back then, because we'd have computers to help us read. And I really believed in this. Fast forward to the future, when I was doing my degree, I was given a laptop by the university that was dictated. It was an Apple MacBook Pro, so I can listen to words. So I'd highlight a word and I'd play it. And then one of the best tools I've come across is Siri for my iPhone, because I don't know how to spell something. I'll just press the microphone button on the phone and I'll say the word and it'll spell it for me. It's amazing. It's such an overcoming way of doing it. And also spell check on a computer. So I type in the word and I click spell check, and then that's how it helped me. Now, how I overcome all of the spelling stuff, because I believe my spelling has got way better and my punctuation has got way better, and how I overcome that was I was doing an access course, and the English teacher was telling me about something, and what my brain needed to do was really understand and engage with a kind of a story or a vision of how something works. And so with the right side of the brain, which is like arts and music and stuff, and then on the left side of the brain you've got like maths and science, dyslexic people take in all the information, and their right side of the brain is working overtime, and then it just fills across little bits and pieces of the literature side, and that's why it takes a long time to get over to the other side of the brain. But if you had presented words in a more picture environment, a more image-friendly environment, then the person with dyslexia may understand it a little bit better. So I was learning how to write out paragraphs and stuff, and one of the things this teacher told me was that, like, look, we'll just write it down here. You have like a bubble at the top for each subject. So each subject that you're going to write about in your letter, it has to have a separate bubble. And I was like, huh? So she was like, look, we're going to talk about a camera. So we talk about the camera, but in the same letter we want to also talk about a dog. So we talk about the camera, and that's one bubble up here, and then we talk about the dog in the second bubble, and every different thing had a different time. So you have these paragraphs and then spaces and paragraphs and spaces, and that's how it's built up. And I never understood this before, because no one ever taught it to me in that way. And then another way is that is having additional things to add to your vision of how things are displayed. So with homophones, so with there, so they are, I'd think of a picture that would go with that word. So how the letters in that word appear, I would know that, like, with well, they're going to get something, it's like, if something is like their fault, I'd know that there's an I and an E in there, and the I and the E is their issue. You know, it's their fault, because there's too many things in there. You know, the I and the E is theirs. And then with the they're going somewhere, I learned that if you're going to have, there's two words, there's they and are, but you need to squash them together. So I realized that if there's a bunch of things in there, so there's they and then a little apostrophe and then RE, so they are, and I realized that those two words together. And so when you start to visually build up these building blocks, you can get better at reading and writing. My reading and writing is still terrible, but I'm way better than I was when I was a kid. I'm way better than I was when I was in high school, and way better than I was when I was in university. And it's because I don't give up, and I always strive to want to learn more about dyslexia. And I think that is key to anybody trying to overcome dyslexia from their point of view.